We have been fluoridating our water in Tennessee for more than 50 years, but never before has there been more talk that fluoridating our water might be a bad idea and a health risk. Tonight, Dennis Ferrier has the latest developments on a story that impacts all of us.
Joey Hensley is a respected physician. He's also a Tennessee state lawmaker. He is now combining those two professions to make a very strong point.
We've been doing it 50 years, but just because we've been doing something 50 years doesn't necessarily mean that it's right.
Hensley's talking about something most of us don't even think about, fluoridating water. After much research, the doctor has sent out a letter to every water district in Tennessee asking them to stop fluoridating water. The evidence, he says, fluoride works better when you rub it on your teeth, not when you drink it. That fluoridation is medication added to water without your permission, and that's wrong. But most of all, because the National Research Council believes young children are getting 3 to 4 times the dose of fluoride as adults. And now the American Dental Association is telling mothers not to make baby formula with fluoridated water because of fear of dental fluorosis.
And that's big news, and that really hasn't been publicized very much.
Health researcher Dan Stockin believes that this ADA warning about baby formula and fluoride is just the beginning.
The ramifications of this are so huge, I'm sure that the State Health Department hasn't quite figured it out yet.
Scientists like Nobel Prize winner Arvid Carlson and a large group of EPA scientists have called for the banning of fluoride because we don't know how much we're ingesting, so we don't know if we're being poisoned.
Congressman Calvert of the House Science Committee has letters of inquiry out to EPA and other federal entities on this subject. The 1983 report of a Surgeon General's panel on fluoride to EPA was altered without consultation or notification of the panel members so as to help EPA justify an outrageous set of drinking water standards promulgated in 1986. The results of a 50-year experiment conducted in Kingston and Newburgh, New York show that there's no overall difference in dental caries rates between the two communities, but there's a significantly higher incidence of dental fluorosis in the fluoridated community. Since 1994, there have been 6 studies that show adverse effects of fluoride on the brain, even at the so-called optimum level of 1 part per million. The epidemiology studies that we recommend above should make a prime effort to look at brain effects, given the national concern over attention deficit and hyperactivity disorder and autism in our children. 3 trial judges since 1978 made findings of fact that water fluoridation poses an unreasonable risk to the American people. Fluoridation proponents like to say that there's no real controversy about fluoridation, and they're right. When these 3 disinterested trial judges heard weeks of testimony, they came to the same conclusion that our union did about the unreasonable risks involved. The findings of fact remain untouched in those trials today. Recent publications indicate a link between the use of silicofluorides for fluoridation and elevated blood lead levels in children and antisocial behavior. And leading dental researchers are changing their views on the safety and efficacy of fluoridation. Doctors John Calhoun and Hardy Lineback, both former spokespersons for fluoridation, have published recantations of their former position. On behalf of EPA's professional community, I urge the subcommittee to convene a select committee for a national review of water fluoridation. It's high time we do that, and I'd be happy to take questions. Thank you.
Mr. Hensley, I know you're an employee of the EPA, and I'm assuming that your views conflict with the agency on the issue of fluoridization. Is that correct?
Given the fact that EPA has set the maximum contaminant level as indicated on the chart at 4,000 parts per billion, and the so-called optimum level is 1,000 parts per billion, one could assume that a wash. EPA, I think, is playing the good federal soldier in supporting this program that's been a federal mandate more or less for 50 years, but officially it's not on the list of endorsers.
You cited several studies which were very interesting. I saw them in your statement. What independent studies with no peer review, or has there been sufficient peer review to give these studies more credibility or not?
Now, the ones that are of most concern to us are the peer-reviewed studies that have appeared in neurotoxicology and teratology and brain research in 1995 through 1998. The work of Phyllis Mullinex, for instance, indicated that when rats were dosed, pregnant dams were dosed with fluoride, that would result in serum levels in the brain of the pregnant dams that mimic serum levels in human beings drinking water at that maximum contaminant level. The dams gave birth to pups that were hyperactive, born hyperactive, and remained hyperactive throughout their life. That was the reference in my testimony to asking for a epidemiology study that looked after that particular endpoint. Also in that same journal in 1998, a group of Chinese workers published the results of some research in which they gave basically the same doses that the Mullinex group did, and indicated that there was a depletion of certain critical chemicals in the brain, basically lipids that constitute the neuronal membrane, that could explain on a mechanistic basis the outcome of the Mullinex study. Then in brain research in 1998, a group of researchers which included an EPA scientist found that at 1 part per million, sodium fluoride resulted in changes in the cerebrovasculature in the test animals and also kidney damage.
Also making news today, antibiotics, mood stabilizers, sex hormones, painkillers. No, we're not talking about your drugstore. We're talking about your tap water. A 5-month Associated Press investigation finds trace amounts of drugs in the tap water of 41 million Americans in 24 major metropolitan areas.
Right, and the bottom line, Betty, is that we don't really know what it's doing to us to drink this stuff day in and day out, because they're just now figuring out that it's in the water in the first place. Let's take a look at this Associated Press 5-month investigation, what it found. Here's a couple of sample cities. In Atlanta, they found that there were antibiotics and a blood pressure drug in the water. In Cincinnati, a cholesterol drug and estrogen, which is used pharmaceutically. In New York City, traces of an anti-seizure drug and an anti-anxiety drug. Several water systems had many, many drugs. Philadelphia, for example, had 56 different drugs in the water. Let's take a look at what the Environmental Protection Agency has to say. They're the government agency that regulates water. They say, we're taking this very seriously. We recognize there's a growing concern about the presence of pharmaceuticals in our water. We're evaluating the potential health effects of contaminants at low levels when they occur and how best to remove them. Bottled water might not help you, because bottled water is often just repackaged tap water, so it's the same deal. And also, filters aren't really designed in general to get rid of pharmaceuticals.
Who owns the rain? Turns out, not you. You're actually breaking the law if you try to capture rain falling onto your roof and pour it on your flower bed.
A prominent Utah car dealer found that out when he tried to do something good for the environment. John Hollenhorst has the surprising story.
Rebecca Nelson captures rainwater in a barrel and she pours it on her plants.
We can fill up a barrel in one rainstorm, so it seems a waste to let it just fall into the gravel.
Car dealer Mark Miller wanted to do pretty much the same thing on a bigger scale. He collects rainwater on the roof of his new building, stores it in a cistern, and hopes to clean cars with it in a new water-efficient car wash. But without a valid water right, state officials say he can't legally divert rainwater.
I was surprised. We thought it was our water.
State officials say it's an old legal concept to protect people who do have water rights.
Obviously, if you use the water upstream, it won't be there for the person to use it downstream.
Utah is the second driest state in the nation. Our laws probably ought to catch up to that.
So what about the little guy watering with rainwater at home? Will anybody do anything about that violation of the law?
If she really does do that, then she ought to have a water right to do it.
Are you going to make an issue out of that?
No, we have bigger fish to fry.
Homeowner projects, although technically illegal, are likely to stay off the state radar screen. If raindrops fall on your head, you probably
You better
can do
get
it
rid of
as
them.
you